A sword is held to the neck of a girl who is thinking about the strange place where she will die, so far from home that even no one will know about her death under the big sun in a forsaken and God-forsaken place. A man standing over a stranger holds a sword tightly in his hand. He asks what his victim's last words will be. The girl smiles nervously and thinks how unfair and strange it looks from the outside. Cromwell Empire was rightfully considered the main state of the North, and it was not for nothing that she was called the ruler of the North. It was in this state that the girl used to live in luxury and wealth. There she had luxurious dresses, rich jewelry, and expensive things. But all this did not bring her much pleasure. All the time I wanted something bigger and more significant for my life. Inside, the girl wanted to travel and explore the world in which she lived. Her mind was excited by wanderlust. Every time she reached new places, her blood boiled. That's how her life as a traveler-researcher began once. She has been everywhere, starting with a visit to the prehistoric landmarks of the Northern Empire and ending with the residences of the Fenians in Siberia. In a short period of time, the girl visited all the important places of the northern continent, and it's time to go to the south of the continent. Her path lay across the Great Desert, to the southern country of Cradia, and a week has passed since she got lost. The traveler could not find a way out of the desert, because apart from the sand, there were no other landmarks around. There were no ways around. To make matters worse, her supplies were running low, and there was no water left from the word at all. And it was at this moment that she noticed some silhouettes in the distance on the horizon. It was hard to tell whether it was a group of people or a desert mirage. With her last strength, the girl ran to the people. She screamed loudly and begged not to be left in this hellish place. Finally, reaching the travelers, the girl thanked God and asked to be accepted into the group. Having calmed down a little, the girl asked if the men did not know how to get to Cradia, because she had lost her bearings in the desert and now did not know at all in which direction to move in order to get to the settlement. After that, one of the strangers aimed his sword at the traveler's throat. She thought that Cratia and this traveler's lands were enemies, or that she had said something too much. And then the stranger asked what her last words would be. The girl was silent. She thought about the absurdity and injustice of this situation. The man had already swung his sword, because if the girl didn't want to say the last words, then they don't have time to scold him unnecessarily. The girl asked to wait, because she did not even have time to think about the last wish before death, and she assured that the man can hide the sword, because now it is inappropriate for the situation. The stranger stopped. He did not understand why he had to put the weapon away. The girl, meanwhile, said that she was the most attractive woman on the continent, so she couldn't just die in an unknown desert. She was sure that she would be able to charm a stranger with her charms of beauty. The girl turned to the man and said that in every country there are principles and regulations to protect beautiful ladies from danger. After all, it was quite natural to protect that which gives joy and delights the human eye. She asked the men around her if this was not true and fair for the stronger sex, but her words did not lead to the expected effect. The stranger brought the weapon over her head again. He was not at all impressed by the words about beauty and its protection. He still wanted to kill the stranger. The traveler realized that she now needed to dodge the sword strike. At the last moment, she shouted so that they would not wave the sword in her face. It was against the rules in civilized countries. The man asked what the rules are when killing a person. She says, "All the same, now one will die, and the other will live on and be happy to enjoy life." The girl noticed that the stranger had very beautiful saturated eyes. It was definitely not something to think about before death. But the man's beauty was somehow demonic and attracted with animal magnetism. The traveler noticed that the potential killer began to approach her. The thought swirled in his head that he shouldn't relax, because he might still want to kill her in a bloody way. The stranger looked intently into her eyes. The traveler thought that her plan to seduce him with her beauty might have succeeded, and now she would have a new ally and guide in these wild lands. The man said he changed his mind about killing her, and so she should be grateful to him for saving her worthless life as a woman. The last word is spoken with a certain dislike and even condescension. After that, the traveler did not remember what happened. She regained consciousness in some basement. There were shackles and chains all around. It looks like it was a prison. The heat dried the air, and the girl wanted to drink. A strange man was standing in the doorway to her cell. Most likely it was a security guard. He held a bucket of water in his hands, and when he saw that the prisoner had regained consciousness, he poured the contents of the bucket directly onto the floor. He also told the girl that she should be grateful for the moisture, because it is not yet known how long she will last without water in such heat. The sad prospect did not allow the girl to calm down. She did not want to die in captivity, but it was worth finding advantages in such a situation. Thanks to such a shower, she finally came to her senses and woke up from the dream she fell into while still in the desert. Now she seemed to understand where she was and what was happening. The prison in which she ended up was built in a tower right in the center of the city. The sun was burning here so strongly that you could die from the heat all around. In addition, the girl began to understand where she got to. Judging by how the people around were dressed, how hot it was outside, and how they treated suspicious people or just foreigners, this was the country of the Piesian Desert King. Her home country of Cromwell was placed in the north of the continent, and Piesian was in the south. It was a very large state, and at that time she was also the most powerful in the political arena. But it was important for her personally that Piesian was very aggressive towards her native country, and that is why she tried in every possible way to bypass this country when she traveled to the south of the continent.
By all means, it was necessary to prevent everyone around from finding where she came from and where she was going. It was not worth losing faith now. The prison was built specifically in
The girl was not used to such temperature conditions, and that's why she could soon bend in such conditions. And this meant only one thing. She needed to escape from here as soon as possible by any means. When she looked out the window to survey her surroundings, the girl noticed the same man who had tried to kill her in the desert. His eyes looked directly at her, as if he knew the traveler was following him. In a strange way, the traveler remembered her childhood. She knew that she inherited her beauty and hair from her mother. The mother wanted her daughter to grow up and become a real elegant lady. Every time the girl ran away from the house at the call of the voice of adventure, her mother was very angry and almost went mad with rage at her unruly, naughty child. She often locked her daughter in a room, but she was not the kind of child that her parents' punishments forced her to stay in the room for a long time and think about her behavior. From an early age, the girl learned to open the locks hanging on her door. This made her a true master of opening locks and escaping from locked rooms on any floor and in any building. Thanks to this, she learned many techniques that helped her in life. Physical training and self-education, which she did in her spare time, helped her to develop comprehensively. And that's why the girl learned not to hang her nose even in the most difficult situations, for which she thanked fate. She finally got out of prison. After all, there was no place for a beauty like her. To begin with, it is worth looking for local clothes, so as not to attract weight and not to arouse suspicion in your outfit. Local women had to hide their faces from the surrounding men so as not to tempt them. The tradition seemed stupid and unjustified to the girl. But in this situation, it should have helped her escape. The traveler remembered what she had read about Piesian in books. It was about a powerful state inhabited by free and strong people who built their power in the sands on their own and with willpower. And even though it was strange, even then she wanted to be in this country at least for a day, and to look at how people lived in this country at least with one eye. Although her homeland was at war with this people, could she have imagined then that one day she would be kidnapped right in the desert? And she will end up in this legendary country, not at all of her own free will. Everything around her surprised and confused her imagination. Hot air that burned the lungs with every breath. Buildings and buildings around are made of sand. And among the local population, in fact, there are many representatives of different nationalities. And the girl realized that despite her situation, in reality, this country was much better than the one she knew from books. She got the impression that the girl got to another planet. That is why she loved to travel. The girl couldn't hold back her emotions and screamed out of joy. Although in reality, it was worth controlling yourself and calming down so as not to attract the attention of the guards and not to end up in the dungeon again. You need to find a place to spend the night and only then make plans for the future. Although the next step will definitely be the search for food, because only now did she realize how long she had been taking food. The man who threatened her in the desert walked again among the crowd. The girl took herself in her hands and quickly walked through the crowd. It was much easier to get lost in such a crowd, but she had every chance. In addition, her face was covered, and the man might not remember her at all after that meeting. He should have had many more important things to do. Also, you need to calmly go about your business and not show your concern. But suddenly a stranger stood right in front of her. The girl was afraid that she would be noticed and put in prison again. The man said she reminded him of a rat that had escaped from a trap. He held her hand tightly. The stranger asked to tell him how the girl managed to do it. But he was interrupted by a crowd of men, led by a young man who called the stranger Sihad. Sihad said that he is leaving the woman to him. With coldness in his voice, he ordered to watch over the girl and not to disappoint him. The guards dragged the traveler behind them. She could not understand what fate awaited her, but fear did not leave her. Sihad was walking along the corridor of the palace with an acquaintance. They talked about the girl and how she managed to escape from the dungeon. The man said that even in the desert he noticed how the stranger was different from their women. A friend asked Sihad why he could not use her for his own purposes. The girl, of course, behaved aggressively, but her manner of speaking and her aura indicated that she must have been an unusual commoner. The friend said that, in his opinion, the girl could be the daughter of some prince or ruler from the northern continent. His intuition told him about this. And that's why you can make her an informant. She can relay the information they have prepared during her journey from Cromwell to Kratia. But Sihad said that he is ready to take the girl to his harem. This suggestion confused his friend. The girl was brought to the palace. The aged woman ordered her to follow her. The traveler looked with surprise and interest where they were going. Everything around was richly decorated and very spacious. The woman led the girl to the hall, where there were 3 other young women. Alice asked who all these women were and what they were doing here. A guess flashed through her mind, but she wasn't ready to believe it yet. The woman grabbed Alice by the collar. The girl was not used to this attitude towards her person. She began to resist and warned not to touch her. But her efforts were in vain. The girl remained only in her underwear. After that, she was thrown into a large pool. Women bustled around her and arranged bath procedures. The tired traveler liked it, but everything could have been done in a more civilized way. She was very surprised by all the events that took place around her after she was kidnapped in the desert and after arriving at the palace. Sihad had some intention for her, but it remained a secret for now. The women who bathed her brought her clothes. She doubted she wanted to wear a dress like that, if you could call it that. Oriental manners confused her more and more each time. Sihad was sitting in his room. His servant noted that the master was very cheerful today, which had not happened for a long time. The ruler agreed that he was in a really good mood today because he managed to catch the fugitive. Meanwhile, Alice was examining her new clothes. She couldn't believe that women here wore such things. In a country where it is forbidden for them to show their faces, their stomachs were put on display for everyone to see. The girl thought that she agreed to dress like that only because she was afraid that she would be forced to wear this outfit. And then she remembered about her things, which were distributed to an unknown place after she was undressed. But the most important thing was that her account book had disappeared, and without it, she will not be able to prove her identity during the journey further, if, of course, it happens. It was very bad, and it was worth looking for her in this place. Despite everything, she believed that the main trump card was up her sleeve. It was a magic ring that hid her true identity. She mimicked light eyes and wavy brown hair. Thanks to this artifact, she could travel all this time without fear that someone would be able to recognize her and reveal her identity. The woman who approached her ordered to follow her immediately. An unpleasant feeling followed Alice all the way through the corridors of the palace. The woman took her further and further into the depths of the palace. The girl was interested in where they were heading. Finally, they reached a richly decorated room. The woman said that from now on, Alice will live here while she is in the ruler's harem. The traveler liked the room, until the word harem came to mind. In the girl's understanding, a harem was a city where a rich man keeps several women, or even more, just for the sake of doing whatever he wants with them. The woman confirmed Alice's guesses. The girl fell to the floor. She still could not believe that she would be put in a harem, and there she would feel like a bird in a golden cage. The best prospect for her was to be in prison in the heat. She guessed that it was the idea of that strange man who chased her everywhere and caught her after her escape from prison. But even his pretty face could not save the situation. The woman asked the girl to get up from the floor because she was cold and Alice could get sick. In fact, the woman said, it was very important to get a place in the harem, and such a chance should be rejoiced. The girl screamed at the woman. She asked if everything was normal with the woman's head, that she could say such things. After all, a real man should have only one woman. And she got into this stupid place. It is not clear where a man can afford to have sex with several girls or women at the same time. The attitude towards women here was like toys. It was unfair and very painful for dignity. The woman asked why Alice thought it was unfair. After all, the woman herself perceived the fact that she would be taken to the harem as the highest honor that could be done to her. It was her desire to become Sihad's toy. Alice understood that there was no point in trying to prove something to this woman. They have all been brainwashed, and now they can't hear anything at all, except for the voice that tells them to obey the master. The girl fell on the bed. She asked the maids why it was so quiet around, but she answered that Alice is now the only Ira in this harem. The girl asked if she correctly understood that she was the only woman in the harem. Of Darak arrived in Sikad. The man introduced himself to the ruler. His posture showed respect for the ruler. But the ambassador did not lose his sense of self-respect, for which anyone who could offend him would surely be punished. The owner of the house asked what brought Darak to him. The man replied that he had heard rumors that Sihad had been able to visit and return from the sacred oasis of Ishmael, so he had come to pay his respects. But at the same time, rumors indicated that the owner of the house had brought a white woman with him. In the past, only female slaves could enter the harem. However, how could a woman of low origin satisfy Sikad now? After all, being in his harem is actually a great honor for any girl or woman. And that's why the rumors surprised and embarrassed Jalil. The owner assured that the rumors may turn out to be true. However, the words and their content with which Daraha came to Sihad were very offensive to the host. You can easily pay with your head for this. Sihad's hands were covered in blood. He glared at his guest. Jalil realized that he was on the verge of death. Right now, Sihad's aura was so dangerous that he could kill an opponent with just one look. And it's time to make excuses for the sake of further life. The man said he was just worried about the owner, to which Sihad assured that he did not need anyone's advice or care, and the man should get out of his house, otherwise he himself will not get out of here. Sihad looked after Jalil, who ran away. The master of the palace licked his bloody hand. He thought about getting even with Jalil for his words, and the next time he stands in his way, he will surely die. The girl was lying in her room. She understood the predicament she was in this time. In fact, her life was a hair's breadth away from death. Everything that was happening to her now, in her opinion, was very unfair. But you should pull yourself together and stop despairing every time. You need to think of a way to escape from this madhouse. Alice could not become the wife of some simple, lustful man. The girl remembered how she managed to escape from the Fen dungeon in the north. Then, she managed it so easily that she didn't even break a sweat while doing the dark thing. And escaping from such an open place was, according to her, a very easy matter. But there were two important nuances. The first was that she lost all her belongings, and without them, even if she manages to escape, she will die in the desert. Another was the loss of the account book. It was dangerous without her. She made this artifact while still at home. The book was to be a testament to the power of her parents, and there she had to write down all her notes about routes and travel conditions. It was worth looking for her. Without it, it was impossible to travel to the north of the continent, and there was no need to mention the south at all. Finding a book was her first priority, and you should also think about magic earrings. Alice wanted to throw them off, if only for a little while. Otherwise, they may break from intensive use of magic. If you believe the calculations, the earrings should last another week. And so she had to leave this place within a week. Where should she start her plan? It is necessary to examine the entire area and understand the structure of the house. And so it's time to act and not just sit back. The night has come. Alice looked at the starry sky. She concluded that the moon shines whiter in the south, and in the north it has a yellow tint, and Sihad's residence was extremely huge. The whole house seemed to consist of a large number of smaller houses, all connected by passages. This made it very difficult to find a way out of this veritable maze. The place where her room was located was the most remote, And that's why the escape turned out to be not as simple as it seemed at first glance. Alice thought about who this man really was, who lived in such a palace. She was also very interested in why such a huge house for one person. After all, in this case, its purpose was not only that one person lived here. Guards must also patrol such a palace. Alice climbed over the fence and started walking around the house. It seemed that there were no people here at all. The house and its purpose became more and more a mystery to her. The arrangement indicated that the owner was a powerful man. Alice went out to the garden. She wanted to look at the beautiful garden that somehow beckoned her at night. Thanks to many years of traveling, the girl heard that there was someone else in the garden besides her. She decided to hide. It was a mystery who needed to walk in the garden at such a late hour, and who could be this mysterious guest. And then the secret revealed itself. She noticed the psychopath who captured her in the desert and later took Alice's freedom. Sahid was coming out of the water. He walked straight in the direction of the bushes behind which the girl hid. She could not believe that he would manage to catch her again. The girl was shaking with fear. It was necessary to get out as quickly as possible. But she didn't have time. The man looked at her as she ran away from him on her knees. And according to him, right now she was most like a rat. Sahid asked why she was in the garden at this time. Is she really a spy for the enemies? Alice began to make excuses when she realized that he had actually kidnapped her in broad daylight and brought her to his estate. It was the man who had no right to treat her like that, and it was not he who accused her of espionage and treason. Sahid said that in this country he can do whatever he wants. The girl asked who he thought he was, God or the king of this country. The man replied that he was actually the king of this country, and would the girl behave more quietly now. He leaned over to Alisa and said his name was Sahid Bain Zahdad, and he is the real ruler of Pizian. The girl asked if he was Raccoon, now the living god of this country. Sahid praised her knowledge of his homeland. The owner took the girl on his shoulders. She fought and protested, but that didn't stop him. Alice resisted, but the man did not want to let her go. She was outraged by this man's behavior with the noble lady she considered herself to be. Alice promised that he would be punished for his audacity. Sahid brought her to the room and placed her on the floor. He asked if she was really a spy from Cromwell. The girl understood that it was necessary to reject involvement in her homeland in every possible way. She agreed that she came from the northern continent. However, she is not a spy. The man asked what brought her to Pizian. The girl replied that she just wanted to visit interesting and famous places of the country. Alice said that she is an ordinary traveler, just traveling the world. She asked him to believe her words. Sihad said he would allow such a possibility, and asked if she wanted to attract him to her. The girl noticed the man's strange look on her. His question confused her. She tried to influence him, but she didn't want to seduce him for the sake of it. She did not understand where the man was looking. He replied that she had previously claimed to be among the most beautiful girls and women on the known continent. Alcia remembered their meeting. She replied that then Sahid made fun of her and her words, like a self-confident girl. He took her by the neck. The man said that it was difficult for him to say whether she was really beautiful. But she had extremely beautiful eyes, for which you could freely kill a person. The girl was confused by his words. Sihad placed her on the table and stood over her. The man wanted to kiss the girl. Alice resisted, but could not influence him in any way. The host was extremely strong, and the girl understood that if this continues, the consequences will be sad. She asked to let her go. The man agreed. Instead, he said he welcomes her to his harem. Alice didn't know how to react. It felt as if she had fallen into a trap from which it was impossible to escape, and now she was here forever. In the morning, the girl woke up from the feeling that someone was standing next to her. An unfamiliar girl caught his eye. She said her name was Noor, and from now on she was her new maid. And it is a real honor for her to meet and serve Ira. But Alisa herself's first thought was that Sihad had placed this girl with her so that she would follow her mistress while she was on the territory of the house. Meanwhile, Noor was delighted with the skin of her mistress. Alice asked the maid what the word Ira meant. She answered that this is what Kuna women are called. That is, the girl received the status of a woman who lives in Sihad's palace and fulfills all his wishes, and expressed her congratulations on this occasion. Ira asked not to remind her about the owner. She asked if she could ask Noor for a small favor. The girl had not known such good treatment from her masters, and she felt embarrassed by the tender address. Alice asked if Noor would accompany her everywhere from now on. After all, she was already developing an escape plan in her mind, and she does not need someone to follow her. But Noor replied that she would not stand behind her shoulders all day, and if she causes inconvenience or interferes, then Era can order her to go away and not interfere with her business. Alice breathed a sigh of relief. Nothing was to stop her from planning her escape. Noor left the room and asked her hostess to enjoy peace and rest. Alice thanked the girl and remained alone in the room. She still couldn't believe that she had become Sihad's servant in absolutely every sense. Cromwell's people and Pijians was that in her native lands the people believed in the mystical goddess Lamesh, and in Pijian the god monarch rules, who is entirely made of flesh and blood and is the ruler of all lands. Legend has it that the inhabitants of Pijian believe in their monarch, who, as it were, brings moisture to the desert, thus saving the flora and fauna of this cruel region from perishing under the sun's rays. Here his name is Kun, and it's not just any king. Everything in this region, starting with politics and economics and ending with cultural heritage, is in Kun's field of vision. He is perceived as a true god in these lands. Alice couldn't believe that Ra-Kun was the same man she was with that night. But even this did not give him the right to do with her what he wanted. It really got on her nerves. He had no right to treat her like that. But the main thing that she realized was that it was the first kiss in her life. She said half-heartedly that Kun should have fallen down the stairs and hit his tailbone on the floor for his bad behavior, so he knew how to bully girls. Shida's aide told his master that Jalil's behavior that time did not go beyond what was allowed for his opponent. He is used to treating everyone like this, considering them inferior to him. Their status did not bother him at all. The man continued to talk about how to respond to Dahar's words. After all, they already knew very well what was in that man's head. His plans for the current government were open to Sahid like a book. The ruler said that this time they would just let the matter go, and then they will later see where the audacity of their opponent will lead. The assistant agreed, and once again praised the wisdom of his master. The conversation did not end there. The man said that, in his humble opinion, allowing that girl into the harem was a mistake and a very hasty, rash decision. And what was even worse was that their relationship developed very quickly. Something serious could be born from this, and this will hinder the development of Kun himself because it will distract him from the main things. And besides, said the man who approached Sihad's assistant, he would interfere with state affairs. After all, the Grand Vizier himself hoped that his daughters would get a place in the harem. The representatives of 6 large aristocratic families also hoped that their daughters would become concubines of the great ruler. Another 48 lower-status clans also harbor hopes that their daughters will become Kun women in the harem. Sihad said that he wants to get to know the biographies of all these girls better to understand what kind of people they are. But before that, he ordered that Alice be brought to him. The woman who reported this to Era noticed that she was very surprised. A mixture of emotions and experiences could be seen on her face. Alice followed the servant down the corridor. The girl wondered when her escape plan would finally succeed. But before that, she should eat well. And why did the ruler suddenly want to meet her? What is it for him? And in general, Alice thought, why should she follow the master's first order, like a dog? Of course, it is necessary to fulfill all the whims of her master, who was at the level of a god for the local people. But she was not a toy and had her own will. A man sat on a throne. It seems that he has been waiting for her for a long time. Sihad ordered the servant to leave them alone in the room. The girl was afraid that she would again be alone in the room with this man. She still remembered the kisses well. The girl could not understand what was in the mind of her master. But Noor had already left the hall. Alice realized that for some reason she was ashamed to look into the ruler's eyes. The man asked how long she would try to avoid eye contact with him. He asked how her first night in the harem went. The girl realized that she had to play a role to calm Kun. She replied that she was not avoiding his gaze, but was simply preparing to morally serve her master. As for being in the harem, her first night was beautiful thanks to him. And suddenly, unexpectedly for Sahid himself, she asked how his night was. No one had ever dared to speak like that to the great ruler Pesianus. Kun said that if she liked it so much, Then he could give her the opportunity to stay in the harem forever and have every night so beautiful. It was not clear whether he was joking or asking seriously. She thanked for such a prospect, but refused. Sihad said that last night she reminded him of an unruly cat, and today she was more like a submissive lamb, which generally does not suit her very well. He asked Alice what she was really up to, and asked not to hide from him. The ruler looked carefully at the girl. He understood that everything his assistant Nasir said was true. The girl was quite aggressive, but her mannerisms and appearance are unusual, as is the aura around her. She might actually be the daughter of some nobleman from the north of the continent. He asked Alice what brought her to Pisian. The girl replied as usual that she just wanted to travel and learn about the world around her. Sihad didn't believe a word she said. He said that if she tried to lie to him one more time, her mouth would be shut forever. And now he will repeat his question and wait for a true and frank answer from Era. She was frightened by the way he looked at her in such situations. It seemed that she was standing in front of him completely naked and could not cover herself from him. She had never experienced such a feeling before. The only sane thought that entered Alice's mind on an intuitive level was the one that indicated the need to stay away from this horrible man. He must have really been a god. After all, you cannot hide any opinion from him. The girl was shocked to hear from her friends that Krecha is famous for its delicious dates. And since this fruit was rare in the north of the continent, she decided to travel to this amazing exotic country. And she was also interested in how it is possible to build a city in the middle of solid sand, in which people will live, engage in various crafts and trade, and, in addition, receive guests from many other countries. Pisian made an impression on her. Alice hoped that at least one of her excuses, invented only but, would turn out to be true. But Sihad asked if she had really decided to cross the great desert, which had claimed the lives of more than one traveler, for these foolish reasons. In his opinion, no reasonable soul would dare to go to the desert for such ridiculous reasons. After all, you can definitely die there if you have not had the experience of traveling in similar cities. The man did not believe Era. Among the people, the desert is called the Desert of Death. Even the local residents engaged in trade tried not to go through this place on a trip or on diplomatic missions without any reason. Therefore, Pisian was protected by sands. Sihad's assistant broke them off from the conversation. He said the royal vizier had arrived. The aristocrat demanded an audience with the great ruler. Kun ordered the king's messenger to pass, but he had to wait a little. The girl remembered Kun's assistant. She saw him in the bazaar when she was caught by the great ruler. But now she was mentally thanking this stranger for taking Sihad away from the interrogation. But the assistant was already going to leave. Sihad ordered him to stay. He introduced the stranger to Eri. The man's name was Nasir, and he was Sihad's personal vizier. He relied on the assistant as on himself in all matters, starting with management and ending with personal ones. Nasir said that he was very pleased to actually meet such a charming girl. He turned out not to be such an unpleasant guy as he seemed at first glance. However, she could not fully trust his appearance either. The vizier reported that he did not recognize the charming fugitive in her new outfit, who dared to leave the prison on her own accord under the hot Pessian sun. He said that he was very happy for the ruler who had such a beautiful woman. Sihad ordered Nasir to take the girl to her room, because now he had no free time to talk. He was awaited by the king's messenger, who could not have been brought here by ordinary curiosity. But it seemed to the girl that this was not the reason. The originator and his assistant finally stayed together. Sihad said that he was wary of this girl, and as if there was nothing unusual about her, she behaved quite submissively, but there was some restlessness in her soul. Alice did not want to talk to him when he asked her questions, and each of her answers was as if pulled to the surface by pincers. But at the same time, I did not get the impression that she is so closed that she is afraid to communicate with people. Nasir was ordered to talk to her and learn more about her and her past. He was interested in absolutely everything. And then, from this information, piece by piece, he will create a general picture. The assistant of the great ruler will definitely carry out the order. Alice entered the room where Nasir was working. The man asked to sit where she was comfortable. He was working at a desk, and the girl was at a loss as to what she should do according to local traditions when she was left alone in a room with a stranger. Nasir asked where she had come to their area from, if not from Cromwell. The girl replied that she was from Sigren. It was a small kingdom under Cromwell's protectorate on the northern borders of this country. The assistant replied that he had not even heard of the existence of such a state. Alice said that her homeland is so small that practically only the locals know about its existence as a separate state with its own laws and culture. The girl thought that she was not such a liar. She stopped at Sigren when she traveled north. Well, she didn't really lie about where she came to Pessian from. She, in turn, asked if she could inquire about something. Nasir was happy to tell her about anything she wanted. Era asked about the desert. The vizier replied that it is called the Jarda Desert. This place was so deadly because of the absolute lack of water and moisture. In addition, due to the strong winds that often change in this region, the geography of the desert itself also changes, which is why it is so easy to get lost there even for experienced travelers or local residents who try not to go there without a good reason. Taking into account all the above factors, an ordinary person cannot stay in this harsh place even for a few days. Death will occur due to dehydration, and before that, a person will wander in mirages and entertain himself with illusions. The number of examples of those who died in the desert is simply amazing. Also, the Jara Desert became a place to which all criminals condemned to death would be banished. Exiles never return from there. The probability of survival there is minimal. Nasir added that there is a legend among the locals that the desert is actually cursed. But he himself did not believe in the rumors. In fact, he was trying to understand whether this woman was lying to him. He decided to check her again. The vizier asked if the girl knew that Kratia and Pisian were at war with each other. Alice replied that she had no idea about it. Rumors and information reached her country very slowly, so she could not know about such nuances. She said that the books talked about the founding of Kratia by people who were opposed to the creation of Pisian as an independent country. But she heard about the state of war between these countries for the first time from the vizier at that moment. The man told that a new conflict had recently occurred between the countries, and right now the relations between the states have become the most tense throughout their history. And almost all civilized people knew about this enmity. The girl replied that the Northern Chronicles said little, almost nothing about it, and the news comes very late and with very false testimonies, which could not always be believed. Now she understood why she was mistaken for a spy. Among the whole set of questions, she managed to ask King Pisian about how to get to the enemy country, with which there was a skirmish on the borders recently. The question itself put her in an awkward position. And after escaping from prison, suspicions could only grow. All these circumstances further hampered her plans to escape, and now she understood that she should be grateful that she was simply put in prison and not made something worse. Nasir asked if there was anything else he could inquire about. The question was more rhetorical in nature. He asked if her guides had not recommended that she go around the desert instead of going straight through it. Do all northerners walk through the desert so easily? The girl replied that she was told something similar, but she did not listen and decided to shorten the way. The vizier now did not understand anything at all. This act was strange for such an intelligent and knowledgeable girl. He was still thinking about why the girl had taken such a crazy step. However, what worried him more was that he could not determine for sure whether the girl was telling him the truth or lying. The only thing Nasir was sure of was a lie about the reasons for the desert transition. The man tried his best to see what was hidden under the mask of the charming girl. He could not conduct the interrogation properly because he was distracted by the beauty of the girl sitting in front of him. Therefore, the data may not be objective. On the northern continent, the mountains had contours that were constantly changing under the influence of various natural conditions. But the fields remained perpetually green throughout the year when it was warm outside. But what Alice's country didn't have was seas of sand. This was the reason for such a rash decision made by the girl. The vizier understood what the girl was talking about. He was born and raised in the desert, but he had never thought about her in the way that his opponent spoke about. Nasir wondered what impression the desert of death had made on the girl. That grew up in a country where such a geographical object is a real wonder. Alice replied that the desert and their land turned out to be much more beautiful than she thought. She added that she was so impressed by the scenery and beauty of the desert that she even forgot about the scorching sun. Her attention was completely focused on the sand dunes that flowed like a sea under the influence of the wind. It was beautiful and amazing. That is why she was very surprised and began to be interested in why the desert is called the Desert of Death. Nasir believed her words. He was confused by the fact that such a place the girl called beautiful. Probably, she was the only one who said that. Alice understood that no soul who looked into her eyes could not believe her words. The vizier added that they had found her bag. The girl was overjoyed that her things would now be returned. However, something seriously worried her. Nasir said they were returning her items that did not raise suspicion, but he and the guards should keep something for themselves. The girl did not bother with the account book because a powerful spell of cover and disguise was imposed on her. The vizier said that he was glad to speak with her. There were no more questions today, but he hoped they would be able to meet soon. He promised that he would make every effort for this. The girl thanked for the company. Nasir summoned one of the most loyal servants of Sihad. He ordered a boy named Karim to look after the harem for a certain time. After all, the lady from the north will now live here, although it is difficult for her to stay in one place all the time. The boy was not happy with this idea. He believed that this insulted his dignity, because Karim came from a family of desert guards. This people differed from other inhabitants of the desert in that they constantly fought for their own existence. They served Raccoon faithfully, and it didn't matter to them that they could belong to another clan or have a family. These soldiers were called conquerors, and Karim was one of the most powerful warriors of this clan. He did not understand how some foreign woman could create so much noise and strife, and most importantly, interest the great and powerful Sihad, God in the lands of Pessian. Nasir saw the disappointment in the warrior's eyes. The vizier said that after talking with the girl, he found some points suspicious and very strange, such that they needed some attention. The reason for her visit to their country remained unclear to the end, and it is surprising that she is traveling alone. Karim asked why she couldn't just be killed then if she aroused certain suspicions. The vizier replied that despite all the strangeness, she is not a spy of an enemy state, and therefore simply killing her is not an option. Nasir added that this was not his wish, but the order and command of the most powerful Sihad. And for the ruler, there was probably a reason to take this girl so seriously and have certain plans, and it was not for nothing that she was transferred to the harem. A soldier's refusal was not accepted. Alice was in her room wondering if Nasir believed her story. He wasn't a bad person, but something worried her about it. Given the way she had behaved before, suspicions about her could have arisen very easily. The situation in which she found herself was very strange. In fact, Cratius and Cromwell were mortal enemies, but they could unite only in one situation, to oppose Pessian in the bloody battle. She was worried that when her identity was revealed, and she knew everything about the Cratia that was told to her, then her family would definitely be in danger, and her whole country will be on the verge of collapse and defeat in the eternal struggle. Of course, her parents will not allow the country to collapse because of some conflict there. However, her father, who supported her desire to travel, will not be happy that she has found herself in such a situation and caused problematic situations. She thought about how to get out of this situation. There was a knock on the door. Noor asked to enter the room. Alice asked what the maid wanted from her. The girl said that the warrior who will protect her is already in place. Ira understood that it was Sihad's bodyguard. The landlady ordered the girl to let the conqueror in. When he entered the room, the question of what this girl was doing here could be read in his eyes. It was difficult for the man to hide his emotions. He was not taught this, but she is used to such a reaction. Many people in a situation like this are not very happy to see foreigners in their country, even when there is a possibility that the foreigner will turn out to be a spy for an enemy country. The girl said that she was glad to meet the legendary warrior. Ira knew for sure that in this country, when you don't know who you are dealing with, you need to be polite and submissive to others. After all, it is unknown who he will turn out to be in this region, and that's how you can get into trouble. The girl apologized for her uncovered face. She said that she is still not used to the etiquette here. Ira asked to understand her and put herself in her position. Karim did not think that the girl who managed to escape from prison would turn out to be so fragile and beautiful. The man did not understand how she, with such a delicate, but at first glance weak body, was able to leave the prison on her own. And he was even more interested in how she overcame the path from the north to their borders. It was just hard to believe. The guard bowed and asked to forgive his rudeness and manners. After all, when you live in the desert among warriors like yourself, you become rough and uncouth, like everyone around you. Finally, he introduced himself to the girl. The girl asked to be called by her real name if possible. It would be very nice for her. The man replied that he might well accept her offer. He assured that he would constantly stand guard over the harem, and she could call him at any moment. The girl was left alone in the room. Now the escape plan could fail altogether. In addition to Nur, another person was placed next to her. And this warrior will not be much safer than a servant girl. The prospects of escape were unsatisfactory. She became even more anxious. And that's why she decided to go for a walk. The fact that she will sit in one place will not change anything. And now she will be able to inspect the surrounding area and perhaps think of something for the escape plan. Behind her, Sihad appeared out of nowhere. She thought that this was the last person she would want to see here right now. The girl asked him not to pursue him anymore. Ira was indeed under suspicion, but it is not necessary to follow her. Alice asked the ruler what he was doing here at such a time. Besides, she thought that the king's vizier was visiting him now, but Kun said that he had no excuse for coming to his harem. But the girl asked what the real reason was that he was near her rooms during the day. And if it's a matter of checking, then Nasir should have told him everything. Except that they did not have unity regarding the truth of the words of the Ira. The man replied that he really wanted to see his concubine. The girl could not believe his words. She thought Mr. Raccoon was out of his mind. Sihad looked at her and realized that there is never a dull moment with this woman. Sihad understood that he usually saw only two emotions in other people's eyes: fear or desire to please in order to save one's life. But this woman was not like any other. It was impossible to confuse her with someone else. This time he felt next to the woman in a different way than before. The aura of his concubine captivated with its ambiguity. He saw a reflection of himself in her eyes. Their interpenetration seemed so close to him. He was amazed by the way she usually looked at him. In her eyes there was not even a spark of fear and the desire to please him in order to get some profit. Sihad asked how the girl in his harem was doing, although she was there alone. The girl felt a little uncomfortable from being so close to Kun. She asked how much longer he planned to hang over her, but the ruler could not take his eyes off the beauty of this girl. He was even offended that she was uncomfortable around him. Or Alice felt very insecure about the fact that he was a man, and the girl had never been so close to a man. And if you remember their kiss, this made him very interesting and intriguing. Now he wanted intimacy with her. The girl said that if she had known who the man was whom she then met in the desert, she would never have asked him for directions to the neighboring country. The man agreed that it was strange. A lonely woman who walked through the desert. But he was more interested in something else. Sihad asked how she managed to escape from the prison in which she was placed by his will. After all, no one has ever managed to do this. And he will not accept the explanation that she succeeded purely by chance. The girl said that it was not difficult to break the lock on the cell door. He was very simple and weak, and the gate from the territory was wide open, so it was not a problem. And then Alice did not feel the consequences of her action. The man once again warned her that she would be punished for lying. The girl replied that she was well aware that she could get into trouble after lying to her master about the reasons and circumstances of the escape. Sihad would stop interrogating her. He said she should just provide evidence. She had to bring something to prove her innocence in all this fuss she was making. And then he will leave it alone. In fact, Ira thought that she would rather run away from this cursed place than think of looking for some evidence and prove her own innocence and non-involvement in some crime that was framed against her. It was simply absurd. At night, Sihad stayed in the harem. The girl could not fall asleep even for a second due to the presence of her husband in her room. In her mind, she wished that this wall had fallen from her room, and she hoped that such a night would be the only one in her life. The next day, the girl went for a walk with Nur. Alice could not believe that the harem building itself would be so huge. Nur asked if her mistress did not know that the ruler's wives were supposed to live in the harem with their children and servants. In addition, not only Sihad's women were to live in the harem, but also orphan girls over whom he was to take custody. It was because of this that the building was so spacious and simply huge by the standards of the northern kingdoms. Alice wondered if Kun made orphaned girls his concubines when they grew up. Noor replied that sometimes it happens, but usually the ruler gives such girls in marriage to some important aristocrats, thus arranges their life. In Pizian, there were 6 supreme chiefs and 48 chiefs of lower rank. Kun offers them and their relatives family ties in order to strengthen their power in the country. The girl asked if there was anyone in the palace whom she should be wary of. She remembered Sihad's words that he was the most powerful man in this country. However, he does not want to keep anyone close to him because he does not want to increase the number of people who will dislike him. There was no need for this. Alice thought about who was next in the hierarchy of power after Sihad. It seemed to her that it must have been a large vizier. Only this man treated the ruler of the palace as an equal. The vizier was a confident and cold politician. At the reception, which was taking place just now, Grand Vizier Gedik asked to be excused for being late. However, Sihad replied that life is turbulent and no one can say with certainty what may happen to a person in the next moment. Sihad added that it must have been very difficult for the vizier to look after the country while he was away. The vizier thought to himself that Kun was making fun of him and wished him the worst for the manner of communicating with such an important person. Gedik said he was still going to throw a grand banquet to celebrate his return. Sihad replied that he did not need these ceremonies. But the vizier said that you should not talk like that. After all, the pilgrimage to which the ruler went was a difficult thing. Danger awaited Kun at every step. And I didn't want to mention crossing the desert of death at all. All the people of Pizian prayed and fasted for their lord's successful return from his long journey. Pilgrimage to the sacred oasis was a very dangerous undertaking. And since Kun goes there once every few years, the people of his country leave everything behind and think only about the fate of the ruler Pizian. Their prayers are for Sihad to return from his journey safe and sound, and they wish him to successfully cross the deadly desert with all its traps. But the most terrible thing could be that the ruler would leave them forever. After Kun's return from a trip, a banquet is held that can last up to 2 weeks. Everyone around rejoices that their ruler has successfully returned. People rejoice that their deity did not leave his servants alone and did not forever deprive him of his protection. But Sihad said he had another reason to hold a banquet for all the important and respected families of the country. Kun promised to personally monitor the preparation of this action so as not to burden anyone else with trouble. The man finally asked if he could offer his daughter to the ruler. The vizier asked if Kun remembered his daughter Jakia. Her beauty has just come into force and is blooming like a flower in spring. Earlier, Sihad said that he was not ready for marriage. Kun hadn't paid attention to women before. However, the vizier's daughter could now correct this issue. Sihad was amazed by the fact that he was being openly tried to adjust to his own way by a person who was completely unknown to him. The ruler replied that he understood the vizier's good intentions. However, now is not the time to discuss these issues. And besides, he promised not to let anyone into his harem again. The aristocrat did not understand Kun's words. Sihad said that is enough for today. Alice was sitting in the garden. She felt someone's gaze on her. However, no one was visible around. She realized that her invisible companions could not be seen by an ordinary person. They are hidden behind a curtain for her. Suddenly, she noticed Karim, who was standing very close. Alice asked if he wasn't supposed to be guarding the harem door now. The girl began to ask why the man continues to spy on her and asked to tell Sihad to stop doing it. Deep in her soul, she wanted to make fun of these naive men who thought she was a fool and hoped to catch her at the moment when Era thought to run away or do something unusual. And Alice decided to act. She looked flirtatiously into the guard's eyes and said that he was extremely attractive and too handsome to be and remain an ordinary guard. The girl asked if the guard had a lover. This question put Karim in an awkward position. Alice continued to talk about the fact that the boy must not be afraid of women and girls. Ira's plan was implemented. She wanted so much to talk to the guard, so that he left. Alice reached for Karim's weapon and took hold of it. The gesture was ambiguous and very confusing Karima. He did not expect such behavior from a noble lady. Ira asked what was so big, a scimitar or a shashmir. She asked to look at him. Karim was a real professional warrior and had a clear discipline, almost iron. But the behavior of his ward put him out of order. He knew perfectly well what to do when he met his mortal enemy. But he was powerless against the girl. Alice still kept up with the warrior's questions. She was interested in how he became a tamer and everything about it. Even Noor got tired of listening to the girl's nagging. The questions became more and more ridiculous, and the maid couldn't stand it. A voice was heard behind them, distracting them both. They were asked when they became such friends. Sihad approached almost inaudibly, or the footsteps of the master, who decided to see how things were going in the harem, could not be heard behind the girl's babble. Nasir caught up with him. The man asked Kun where he got off his feet and left so abruptly. But the ruler did not hear him. He asked if the girl had really fallen in love with her bodyguard. The question sounded a little strange and harsh. The guard asked the girl to be careful and not to say anything that could provoke Sihad. Now was a very tense moment. After all, Kun is never ready to give away what he has his eye on, just like that. Karim took care of himself and Elisa. The girl told the ruler that women always like strong knights. They are in awe of brave and powerful warriors, and Karim was a real handsome man. The warrior did not know what to do at the moment. He expected the fury and anger of his master. Alice asked if Sihad had come here for this to hear these words. Or maybe he was interested in the type of men Era preferred. Sihad was fascinated by the sharpness of the questions and the tone in which the girl spoke to him. Nasir looked over his master's shoulder and said that it was he who was trying to talk to Alice. It was obvious that the servant was trying to justify his master. He did everything possible to keep his face from being embarrassed. The vizier said that he had several questions regarding the northern continent, because he became too interested to learn more about the places from which the girl came. Alice said that she was not ready to tell for nothing. The vizier looked back at his ruler. He asked the girl what she would like to receive in exchange for information. Alice was glad that Nasir bought into her provocation. She asked for the return of her bag, which was seized and not returned until now. The men were shocked by this request. They could not understand what was so unusual in that bag. After all, the girl could want everything that is possible to want in her position. Sihad said that some of her items were heavily enchanted. Alice decided that there was no point in hiding any longer. She must reveal everything she has been keeping secret from these two. Era gathered her strength and said that the bag contained her underwear and women's toiletry items. And that's why the spell is imposed. Sihad started laughing. He answered the girl's question that she is really so unpredictable. It definitely shouldn't be boring with her. The ruler ordered to return the bag of his concubine. Nasir rushed to carry out the order. Alice and the vizier were sitting at the table. There were dates on the table, specially picked for the girl. Ira asked what exactly Nasir wanted to know about the north. The man said he had a few questions about Cromwell. He assured that the girl can talk about everything that comes to her mind. Everything will be useful, and over time, the falsehoods and inaccuracies of the data will be discarded. Alice decided to tell well-known facts about her country, Cromwell's politics, culture, and religion. In fact, this country was a true paradise on earth. Evergreen trees and flowers, luscious grass, and charming picturesque landscapes delighted the people who lived there and travelers. The population of the country was simply extraordinary people. Every child from the very beginning of his life felt that he was proud of his homeland. Later, this feeling was deepened at school and in other educational institutions. Alice herself fell in love with this country very much during her travels. There were two powerful and influential families in Cromwell. It was they who did all the affairs in this state. The Cardiones were a family of knights, and Astadi were scientists and philosophers. Thanks to the protection of these two authoritative families, the imperial family has managed to be invincible, and no one can resist its might and power. Order and discipline reign in the country. That is why the political situation is stable within the state. Cromwell's policy was that there were never any uprisings or popular that were dissatisfied with the situation in the country, or quite diplomatic principles of government prevailed there. Nasir thanked for the interesting story. The information he received turned out to be quite amusing and valuable for his political outlook. In his opinion, the lady also knew a lot about Cromwell, which hinted at suspicions. The girl said that almost everyone who lived in the north of the continent knew about what she told. That is, she shared rather mediocre data, known even to the children of that region. The vizier said that there are enough of them for today. He already received a lot of valuable information. Next time, he expected to hear many more interesting things. Era did not expect that the next time would happen. She began to be afraid. The girl asked when she would receive her bag. The vizier replied that the bag would be returned when he received answers to all the questions he was interested in. Alice understood that she had been deceived. Nasir said he would return the item when he deemed it necessary. It seemed that she was in the same situation from which it all began. The girl was still watching the guard walking around. She was struck by the disorganization of the guards. Patrol times were constantly changing. But she still did not abandon the idea of escaping from the palace. And when she has complete information about the time and routes of the patrols, everything will be fine. The only question left was how to get to Sirte, the town that divided the north and south of the continent. But it is worth returning to the current situation. Problems should be solved as they arise. Now you need to figure out how to escape from this place. She again had the feeling that someone was watching her. It was strange that she did not see anyone around, and Alice was sitting high on the roof, about which no one could find out. It was so difficult for her to get here, and now someone revealed her secret. However, there was no need to panic right away. But over time, the mystery was revealed. The girl noticed the Supreme Vizier in the company of an unfamiliar man. They talked quietly about something, and gave the impression of conspirators planning something against Kun. The interlocutor of the Vizier said that, most likely, it was a small animal. However, the safety of their case should not be neglected, so they will discuss the details at the next meeting. Care must be taken. Alice was swimming in the pool. She was thinking about the men she saw last night during her walk. Fortunately, they didn't see her, but she had an unsettling feeling. At the same time, she did not want to contact these people. The stranger's gaze gave the impression that the snake had wrapped its slimy tail around the body, and the head was already brought in to bite. The girl did not even want to see this person anymore, and there was no question of meeting in the open at all. In addition to everything, the earrings changed their color. Era knew there was very little mana left inside them, but she didn't think it was that much. According to her calculations, the charge should last for another week or more. She decided she had no choice but to take off her earrings for a while to conserve energy. But it will be difficult to hide the transformation of the appearance in the usual way. It all starts with the eyes. Although this metamorphosis is not as noticeable as the change in hair and skin color in general, Noor said she forgot to tell her landlady something. Rakun had been waiting for her for some time. Alice wondered why his visits had become so frequent. When Sihad came to her, the girl asked why he often comes to her, as if he wants to know something important or where the treasure is hidden. The man replied that he had every right to visit his beloved concubine. Alice asked not to laugh at her. And yet, she didn't care about Kun's jokes and mockery. The ruler asked if the long, beautiful hair did not prevent the girl from traveling. After all, it is necessary to constantly look after him and take care of him. The girl replied that the next time she went on a trip, she was going to cut them off. Alice was only afraid that her relatives and friends would not understand this, because they believed that a lady should have long, beautiful hair. The man asked if she was the only child in the family. And what kind of relatives is the girl talking about? Ira said she has many cousins and sisters, and they are so close that they replaced her brothers and sisters. Sihad asked if her real name was Elisa. Surprised, the girl asked why he was interested. He replied that there were still many things he did not know about, but I hope to learn more over time. That's why he tries to spend holidays together. The girl laughed. She believed that lying in such a position was already too much. The ruler noticed that Alice was not selfish and not too self-confident by nature. He had never seen such in his life. Ira talked about her parents and about the choice of a name for her, arranged by her father 3 months before her birth. The girl spoke warmly and very tenderly about her parents, and the word Alice meant light and blessed from ancient times. Sihad said that it seems to him that a girl like her grew up in an atmosphere of love and respect from her parents for each other. Unlike him, who held on only thanks to his own endurance and willpower. He just had to survive. But now he wondered why a girl who lived in such an atmosphere decided to leave her home. It was very strange and unusual for him. After all, instead of a cozy house, she got a journey through a dangerous world. Alice was not lost. She asked a counter-question as to why Sihad stays at home all the time. He didn't like the tone in which it was said. The girl asked if he did not like the way she addressed him. The girl asked what the word Sihad means, because Nasir also calls the ruler by that name. The man replied that the word meant, "my God." Alice was surprised by the directness and frankness of the man. Ira asked how she should address her husband. He replied that his full name was Sihad Zani Behdad. The girl asked if she could call him Behi, from Behdad. Sihad said that sounds good. Alice changed her position. She asked why the man was asking her so many questions. Did the great ruler have nothing to do, and he wasted his time on clarifying such unnecessary questions? The answer stunned. The man said that he likes her very much. She asked him not to say something about which he did not understand anything. Sihad asked why Era thought he was talking about things he didn't understand. Suddenly, he leaned the girl against the wall and kissed her. Alice still could not understand why he was doing everything so unexpectedly. It even scared her. All this was dangerous. She had to move back to increase the distance. But Sihad himself backed away from the girl. He understood that he had let himself down. If the man did not pull himself together and leave in time, he could find himself in a difficult situation. He never let anyone take control of him. This was not befitting a ruler, but at the same time, a thought about who this girl was to him was spinning in his head. Feelings for her were quite strange. And Era is too timid when it comes to a man. She was not experienced in matters of the heart. Alice did not understand why she did not have the experience of communicating with men when her peers already had a lot of knowledge on this matter. And Behi added that otherwise he would not have backed away after kissing her. The girl could not understand why he was doing this to her. But Behdad said that he likes her very much, and that is why he cannot resist being seduced by her beauty and attractiveness. In fact, he saw changes in eye color, and he pretended that nothing terrible had happened. And also, due to the fact that he likes her very much, he does not force her to do anything that could upset or offend her. Alice thought that the changes in appearance were not noticeable, and no one should have noticed the difference unless they looked closely. And so, Sihad was too interested in her to see the small changes that happened to her. She pretended that she did not understand what the man was talking about. The girl went to the mirror, and the question was spinning in my head, how to tell and answer the ruler about this claim of his. The girl was on the edge. It seemed that the man was actually checking her for lies. Again. He couldn't be blamed for that, considering the circumstances of their first meeting and her request regarding an enemy country. Alice returned to the ruler. She asked, "Is everything okay with his vision?" After all, she did not notice the slightest change in the mirror, and all his suspicions turned out to be groundless again. But Sihad said he couldn't help but notice the difference, because he always looked into her eyes. They charmed him even at their first meeting. And now Behi often remembered those eyes. They did not give him rest and excited his imagination and heated his blood. And that's when I realized one thing related to this woman. Thoughts about other women completely disappeared from his head. Alice's behavior surprised him. She always kept a guard close to her when he was around. However, she did not push him away when he demanded intimacy. She definitely did not deceive him. But at the same time, she did not prove much to him. There was some ambiguity between them. This confused him even more. In fact, the desire to stay only with her and not to see anyone in this world raged inside. Sihad could not understand who this girl really was, and he himself wanted to dance to her tune. She almost filled all his free space. Behi decided to backtrack on his intention and position and said he could have been wrong. At night, her husband asked her to tell him about the reasons that prompted her to leave her native home and start traveling. Alice said that the world in which she lived was so beautiful and encouraged to live, and living in one place was boring. The position was unfamiliar to the man because he had spent his whole life in one place and could not think about starting to travel. The girl replied that she understood him. She herself seemed to many an oddball. Alice asked when Behi was going to leave her room. He asked why he had to leave his harem and why the girl saw this as a problem. She said that she would not be able to sleep while an unknown man was lying next to her. He hugged her tightly. The man told her to fall asleep and not be afraid of anything, unless they want to go back to where they left off last time. Alice did not know what to answer. The girl thought that it would be great if her time was free at night, But due to the frequent visits of the ruler, she could not leave her room in the harem. His presence burdened the girl. It is worth thinking about how she will do it during the day. The next morning, Alice asked the servants if she didn't think there was too much fuss around. Noor replied that everyone around was preparing for the banquet, which would soon take place. It was arranged by a great ruler. The banquet was arranged for the safe return of Sihad from the deadly desert. A grand festival was to take place in the palace and beyond. The girl thought that this would be a great opportunity to slip out of the palace and run away. Considering the crowd of people who would come to celebrate the return of their beloved ruler, who was considered the god and patron of these lands, not a single living soul was to notice her disappearance. The plan took shape on the day of the banquet. All that remained was to remove everyone who could follow her that day. The feeling that Karim was somewhere nearby did not leave her. She felt him constantly. The great warrior kept his eyes on his ward during the day. He did not want to provoke Sihad's anger. Karim had been trying to avoid contact with the girl since Sihad had nearly killed him with a look for simply being near him. But the girl herself was very reliable. She constantly tried to be around and flirt with him in every possible way. In fact, Alice was hoping that the guard would simply decide to leave her and be left alone. The girl specially got him with her stupid questions. The guard himself asked what he could give her. Ira said that she was still very interested in learning more about the great warriors of the desert. He said that he understood her interest, but it was important that they spend less time around each other, so as not to incur the wrath of the ruler. Noor looked at this couple. She herself did not understand how Era could flirt so openly with the guard. Did she not understand that this would cause a great scandal and anger of the ruler? What will she do when Sihad finds out? Jakia came to visit. She said she came to congratulate her master on his return. The lady asked Alice if she really was the ruler's new Era. The stranger said that it was nice to meet her. Jakia was the eldest daughter of the Grand Vizier Gedik Ahmed. Alice thought that this girl was actually very beautiful. Her beauty was not like the women and girls of the north. It was a southern example of tenderness and femininity. What was the value of long wavy hair and beautiful eyes that penetrated to the very depths of the soul and did not give peace? Refined facial features did not allow you to look at the girl calmly. Various thoughts arose in her head next to her.